Hi, let us today look at Marxism as an approach to study literature and culture. We'll start with the political and economic thoughts of Karl Marx and his collaborator Friedrich Engels. Marx was a German philosopher and thinker. Maybe you're familiar with his books Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital. According to Marx, capitalism is basically a power structure. It's based on class oppression, class struggle. Actually, for him, all societies in history can be viewed as a struggle between two different groups with different amounts of power. So, in the capitalist mode of production, the antagonism is between the two classes, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, that is the working class. This imbalance of power defines not just the economics of the society, but the socio-economic relations too. Marx analyzes the identity of a person as itself a product of history. This means that it is not the pre-existing entity which we take for granted. When we use the terms such as human nature or rational being. So if we as a person believe that sati was an inhuman practice. Maybe you know what sati is. It was an ancient Indian practice of burning a widow on her husband's funeral pyre. We all think that sati is a terrible thing to do. Who would want to burn a widow on her husband's pyre? But that is not because of our basic human nature, which we think is the same in all ages, at all places. But there were societies in some place at some time that thought sati was the perfectly rational thing to do, that it is perfectly normal. There may be some societies that believe that burying a newborn girl child is also normal. There are societies like that. So similarly, there were and are different societies in different times, in different locations. So the point here is that human identity or consciousness is not just a given, it's a convenient fiction. Similarly, we can say that a text is also a product of the economic conditions of the time. Economics influences everything. Any historical change in the mode of production reflects in the class structure of that society. Establishing new equations of power. So, if you have an agricultural society, the relationship between the worker on the farms and the owner of the farm is a different kind of power relationship than it is in an industrial society where you have the worker in the industry who's working and the profits go to the owner of the factory. So Marx says that it is not the consciousness of men that determines their being, but on the contrary, their social being determines their consciousness. It is their social situation that is building up their consciousness of these people. This brings us to the idea of superstructure and base. Any society comprises a base and a superstructure. The base refers to the forces and relations of production or the materials and resources that generate the goods that the society needs. So it includes infrastructure, modes of production, for example, whether agricultural society or industrial society. The base, we talked about agricultural society and industrial society earlier. And the superstructure is all the other aspects of society, including politics, law, family, religion, and of course literature, entertainment, culture, everything else. The base influences the superstructure. That is, if it's an agricultural society, it will be a particular kind of culture in that society. If it's an industrial society, or if it is capitalist, or if it is communist. So how we work determines or influences the superstructure. And the superstructure also in turn helps to maintain the status quo. That is, the superstructure does not admit change, or at least strives not to admit change. This means that the superstructure maintains the base while the base shapes the superstructure. So there's a two-way relationship. It's always that the base influences the superstructure, but the superstructure also helps to maintain or keep intact the base, the mode of production. Human consciousness at any time is shaped by the socio-economic system at the time, which, as you know, is the base. This human consciousness is constituted by an ideology. Ideology is part of the superstructure. Now, what is ideology? The beliefs, values, and ways of thinking and feeling through which human beings perceive. These beliefs and ways of thinking that appear to be natural at any given time serves the interest of the dominant economic and social class at that time. We think that it is natural, but it's actually manufactured. These beliefs shape a person's behavior and perception of the world. Engels actually described this ideology as a false consciousness. The working class is not aware of the workings of ideology, neither do they have any control over it. This is what Marxists claim. Now, the Marxist uses these ideas to explain how literature or culture is a product of the dominant ideology. Naive Marxist criticism, or vulgar Marxism as it is called, considers all literature as propaganda. That is, propaganda is something which it serves to perpetuate the dominant ideology. Just makes it continue, this dominant ideology. Though it begins with the demand that these cultural products reflect the social reality of the times, Marxist or vulgar Marxist criticism often ends up demanding the creation of literature in their favor. That is explicit propaganda. But we also know that all literature is not propaganda. The problem is that this kind of approach, this kind of Marxist approach to literature or culture does not account for revolutionary literature. Another term to note here is hegemony. It was previously used by Marxists like Lenin, but Antonio Gramsci used the term hegemony to refer to an internalized form of social culture. It explains the relationship between the dominant and the compliant classes. Hegemony is the domination through culture or discourse. It manufactures consent invisibly through means like media, education, or religious institutions. So within hegemonic relations, it's not always force that is used. There is an element of consent that convinces people. According to Gramsci, then, hegemony is where the subject was so enmeshed in a cultural network that he or she is persuaded to act in a certain way, unknowingly. The thoughts of Raymond Williams is pertinent here. He is a Marxist and cultural critic. So we'll look at his ideas in a different video.